welcome to the Actors Post. My name is Alister Albert, the founder of the website. And usually, you don't get to see my face often on camera. We usually reserve the rights of interviews to the featured guests that we have on the website. So usually, if you check out any of the interviews that we have on the Actors Post, we tend to focus directly on the interview subject, but we kind of switching it up a little bit. If you've seen any of my social media posts recently, I started off two other channels where we have these interactive discussions with guests on Baseline to Baseline with Alister Albert, which is a basketball chat show that I run, and also Expose the Soul, which is another one that I started off recently, where we discuss people's love for sneakers and collecting and all that sort of stuff. And what I've realized is that conversational style and discussion with interviewees is really good. So we decided to bring it on to the Actors Post and have a chat with our featured guest here today, who is a lovely guest which we're really excited about, and I hope you are too. And if you are an actor or an aspiring actor or anyone who just loves film and loves going to the movies, loves going to the cinema or catching it on Netflix, Amazon Prime, wherever you catch your movies nowadays, sometimes you might want to know a little bit about the film, or maybe find out about the original or what films any of the cast members had been in before. Usually you'll probably default to going to Google, searching up a name and getting an IMDb result for that actor. And IMDb has become a resource of information where you could find everything about movies, the plot, the cast, the producers, the directors, writers. So we are very, very excited and feel very appreciative to have the founder and CEO of the IMDb Internet Movie Database, Mr. Col Needham, here with us on the Actors Post. We'd like to thank you very much, Col, for joining us here today and agreeing to do this interview with the Actors Post. And we've sent you a couple of questions which we'll go straight off into, and I hope you enjoy the interview. So first question for you then is this. The first one we definitely wanted to ask was, when did you realize the database would be such a great worldwide resource for movie information? And are you surprised about what it's become?
So first of all, I am definitely surprised about what it's become. I don't think anybody could have predicted this. It began as my film diary when I was a teenager. So initially, I was seeing so many films I couldn't keep track of which ones I'd seen and which ones I hadn't. Right. And this was like early 1980s. Right. So I did the classic film geek thing, which is kind of buy a paper diary and just kind of like write in the paper diary the title of each film each day, or many films each day. Right. And I already had an interest in computing right from kind of quite an early age. So essentially, my paper diary really lasted about 2 weeks.
Right. Okay.
Because I was kind of like, well, why bother with a paper diary when I can create a database?
Well, it's one of two things: either you watched so many movies and it filled up really quickly, or you just wanted to shift onto computer.
Yeah, that is a fair point. I mean, one of the disadvantages of the paper diary is that you can only write the title in it. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the database, I had column for the director, for the writers, right, for the cast, what I thought about it, and all of that kind of thing. So that was kind of like 1981. Right. I backdated my diary all the way to the 1st of January 1980, which is like about a month before I became a teenager. So in terms of kind of like, did you ever think your teenage diary would become what IMDb has become now? Absolutely no way did I possibly imagine that could be true. I got online quite early, so 1985. Actually, it was the summer before I started at Leeds University in the autumn. Was when I got my got my first email address, which was quite an unusual thing back in those days. I met some like-minded people who had a similar passion for collecting credits and organizing information in a film-related discussion group. Yep, go ahead.
People you met, were they at university as well, or is just around the world as well?
No. And I'm using met should be in quotes, because I mean engaged with online. So I didn't meet them at all.
All right.
So just began exchanging email with other fellow film fans from around the world. Right. And then one thing led to another. And on the 17th of October, 1990, I posted the very first version of the IMDb software onto the public internet, as it was back then. So no World Wide Web, downloadable software that you would install on your own computer, no fancy graphics or anything like that, but just kind of very basic text with essentially you could search for directors and cast members. And that was it. But within a couple of weeks, somebody mailed in and said like, oh, I'm a big fan of writers. Have you thought of adding writers to the database? And so it's kind of like, well, writers, that would be great. I'm a bit busy doing the bits that I'm doing, but do you want to be the person who manages the writers' data? Okay. I can give you the writers for all of the movies that I've seen. I can give you some software that will help you manage writers' contributions coming in, and some software to publish it back out onto the internet. And then I can add it to like the categories inside the database software. And so that person mailed back and said yes. And over the next few years, we recruited volunteer. So this is all volunteer. There was no commercial use of the internet, no World Wide Web. Right. Volunteer data managers who just cared enough about a particular type of data or a particular kind of credit, right. That they cared enough that they would give up their time to help coordinate and publish that information. And so that was going along very, very nicely. I'll keep this relatively brief because we'll be here all day otherwise. But by the summer of 1993, I received another email. This was from a PhD student, computer science student at Cardiff University. Okay. Now, I'm in Bristol. Rob was the guy at Cardiff University. And his, so not actually too far away from where I'm standing today. Yeah. But again, we didn't meet. Yep. And Rob's email was kind of like, oh, hey, Col, just installed the movie database software. I think it's really good, but have you heard of this World Wide Web thing? I think it might be quite big, right. And would love to write a wrapper around the software to create like a website. And so I wrote back and said, yeah, sounds like a great idea. And so we launched the website at Cardiff University. Sorry, it wasn't Leeds.
Well, it is. No way you could get it.
At Cardiff University, again, just, spare capacity. At Cardiff University. So not a commercial enterprise, no advertising, nothing like that, just another way to access the database. We soon filled up all of the spare capacity at Cardiff University. And so we ended up with copies of IMDb all over the world at different universities. And then flash forward to 1995, and the web was growing like crazy. Everywhere you went, newspaper articles, BBC TV show about, how to use the internet.
Imagine that.
Guidebooks, everything crazy kind of thing. And our traffic was just growing and growing and growing like crazy. And so we found ourselves in this kind of crazy situation of it was super successful, but it was a hobby.
Right.
And we were running out of free time to do it all. And so we agonized about, well, should we close it down because it was just too big to manage? Or could we incorporate, maybe sell some advertising, and maybe one or two of us could work part-time on keeping this thing up to date? And I know, this sounds ridiculous now, doesn't it? Because you're kind of like thinking, really? They didn't have any idea? But going back to, gosh, that is 26 years, isn't it now? Yeah, so going back 26 years, you could count the number of websites that were advertising supported on two hands. Right. And it wasn't even clear whether they were actually making any money or whether it would just be a fad and it would all, kind of collapse, within a few months or whatever. So it was a more daring decision then than it appears now. Yeah. But we went for it. We bought our first web server on a credit card. We didn't take any venture capital money or any outside investment or anything like that. We launched IMDb.com in time for the Oscars in 1996. Luckily, I sold our first piece of advertising 2 weeks later. So before, the 4-week interest-free period on the credit card. Yeah. So I sold advertising after 2 weeks so we could pay back the credit card before it was due. Yeah. And then we could buy some more servers and kind of like grow the capacity of IMDb and everything. So that was going great. We all still had full-time jobs.
I know what that's
still
like.
doing this.
Yeah. Definitely.
But then the summer of 96, we sold our first piece of advertising to a movie studio. It was for Will Smith's movie Independence Day. And so it's kind of like Fox paid us money to advertise Independence Day on IMDb in 1996. And it was kind of like, okay, maybe this is going to go somewhere.
Well, there's a piece of trivia for anyone who wants to know it. Fox and Independence Day first advertising contract for you guys. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes, yeah, a great pub quiz, IMDb pub quiz question there for you.
I'm the holder of that information. I'm really proud to know that now.
Actually, I did get to tell Will Smith that story in Cannes about 4 years ago, which was kind of cool. He had a nice smile on his face when I told him that he'd been quite instrumental in the launch of IMDb. So I quit my day job, became our first full-time employee. And then from that moment onwards, as we sold more advertising, I would ring up our next person on the list to be hired. And I would go, hey, we can afford to pay your salary, quit your day job, come join the team. And they would join the team. Now, again, remember, this is all, people are all over the world. So we've not met anybody in person. It's all done virtually. It's before Zoom. It's before
that takes working to a whole new level. It's so commonplace now, but now it's so easy for you to do that. But then I could imagine how much of a venture that was to do. So that's
Yes. Yeah. Even international phone calls were a fortune. Oh, yeah. So it was kind of like, it was email based. I figured if you were going to quit your day job and join the team, you should at least speak to me once before you do that. So it was always, the hiring was always a phone call.
Okay.
So that was going great, and we were this is into kind of like 1997, and then by the end of 1997 I got an email, and there were several, kind of like key emails across this journey. So this is the next key email. So December 1997, I get an email, and it's from someone who is the general counsel at Amazon.com. And the email went pretty much like this. Hi, Col. Jeff Bezos and I were discussing movie websites the other day. Naturally, IMDb came up in the conversation.
Naturally,
we're going to be in the UK
right.
in January, and would love to meet to discuss some business ideas. And so it's kind of like, oh, this is good. Amazon were advertising with us at the time, so we thought, it's like they want to kind of like come and negotiate like more ad space. So January now, and I know, and I mean, it's a similar thing. You might be thinking like, really, you didn't have any suspicions when this email came in,
right?
But again, at the time, so December 1997, Amazon only sold books. They had only been a publicly traded company for 7 months, and they had never bought anybody before.
Right.
Never bought another company. So we just did think it was, like an ad deal. I mean, you get an email like that today, and immediately you would be breaking out the champagne,
definitely.
and kind of going, oh my goodness, look, I've got an email. Amazon are interested. But back then, different story. So went along in January, met with Jeff, had a conversation about how things were going, where things were going. And Jeff explained how Amazon was going from selling books to music, and then would be opening an online video store. And would we be interested in a business relationship around this? And anything would be possible, anything from a licensing deal where they just license the data for a fee. But much more interesting to Jeff would be an outright acquisition, and IMDb would join the Amazon team, and we would go on an adventure together. So luckily, we chose the latter.
Right.
And so on the 24th of April 1998, IMDb became the first company that Amazon acquired. Now, the interesting thing is they actually acquired 3 companies on that day. They acquired, so we're kind of, the 3 companies are kind of Amazon's joint first acquisition. So the one company became Amazon.co.uk. It was a UK bookseller, which became Amazon.co.uk. One was a German bookseller, which became Amazon.de.
Right.
And then the third is IMDb, which remains IMDb. And so at first
they stuck with their strengths, and they continued along the book line, and they just brought you in.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that was the thing. So the media coverage at the time was kind of like, okay, Amazon buys bookseller. Oh, and entertainment database. What's going on here?
Foresight.
And then, of course, later on in 98, Amazon opened the video store powered by IMDb. And it's kind of like, oh, now we see, why this makes sense. Then the UK video store opened, and it's like, oh, now we see why it makes sense. Then Amazon got into downloadable movies. This was before the internet was fast enough for streaming. Also powered by IMDb, and it's like, oh, now this makes sense. Then Amazon Instant Video launched, and it's like, oh, now this makes sense. Then Amazon Studios opened, and it's kind of like now Amazon is making movies and TV shows. And it's like, oh, now this makes sense. The Kindle Fire tablet launched, where there's a feature on there, and you can now get this on Fire TV devices and anywhere you watch Amazon Video. If you pause the scene in a movie or a show, up will pop the headshots of everybody that's in the scene.
Yep.
You can click again, and you can read all about them. You can read trivia. There might be the soundtracks. The locations will pop up as you're watching the show or the movie, all powered by IMDb. So it's kind of like, oh, now it kind of like makes sense. Then Amazon launches these wonderful Alexa devices where you can interact by voice. And guess what? If you ask Alexa an entertainment question, there's a good chance that she will answer using data from IMDb. And so it's kind of like, oh, so it's really been a kind of like, so IMDb, so 30 years old last October, 23 of those years next month will be part of Amazon. And we've been continually listening to customers and building new services along the way. So completely everything in there, to answer your actual question, everything in there has been a surprise. You could never have predicted where this would go. And it's exciting still to kind of think about where we can go in the future as there's more technology and, greater, more content. I mean, for us right now, one of the things is, it's never been easier for a storyteller to be able to make a film. I'm holding my phone here because you can shoot a movie, you can shoot a short, you can shoot a web series on a phone. You can upload it onto the internet and publish it and make it available to an audience. So there's an enormous amount of filmed content available. And IMDb's aim is to cover all of it. So connecting storytellers to their audiences. And you would think after 30 years, you would think, well, maybe things would slow down. And instead, things are accelerating. So in 2020 alone, so just 2020, we added over 1 million new titles to IMDb. 1 million in that single year. Now, they're not all from 2020. We're still catching up with some old stuff, I don't know, there's maybe some obscure corners of Hungarian silent cinema that we've not quite fully got covered. And looking out to the future, there are things that always being announced and things like that. But 1 million titles added in a single year. And just to put that in perspective, to add our first 1 million titles, it took 17 years. So the first 1 million titles were from kind of like 1990 through to 2007. So that's kind of like the 17-year period to add those titles. And yet in the space of 1 year, we added another million, and obviously there's now more than 6 million titles.
That is
on IMDb.
That's a timeline that I think that's enviable to any entrepreneur. I think when you were explaining it initially how you got into it, I was thinking about these old tube IBM computers, tube computers with the green text, and you just feverishly typing.
Yeah.
And then to think about the entrepreneurial, negotiations done with Amazon and the power of the internet, even at that time, to bring, the borders closer together, to be able to talk to people and bring them to create IMDb in this way. It's amazing work. You must be happy. And of course, you never expected it to go to where it is, but that's such an achievement.
No.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to question number 2, of course, and I think you mentioned this a little bit in your first answer. You were at the University of Leeds and you studied computer science there. What do you remember about that time at University of Leeds, and the perception of the town at that time?
I loved my time at university. It was a wonderful. So love Leeds, and it's great actually. The university invite me back every year. So there was kind of like a period in the middle where I hadn't been to Leeds for a while, right. And then I think the alumni association kind of found me, and so it's great.
Distant for a little while, so let's bring him back in.
Yes, yeah. And so, I mean, it was so interesting to go back after all of those years and kind of see how the city had grown and expanded. Yeah, the old familiar landmarks are still there. Yep. kind of thing, kind of coming in on the train, and the university is exactly where it was. Right. But there used to be kind of like an epic car park between the university and what at the time was Leeds Poly when I was there in the 80s. Okay. Mm-hmm. And all of that space has been kind of consumed by buildings from now both universities. Yes. And it was lovely from just from the perspective of something that they said, I remember on the open day that I went to back in 1984, it's Leeds University, the advantages of a campus university combined with a city university, because we were just right on the edge of the city. So it was wonderful for certainly for cinema going. I have many happy memories of going to cinemas throughout Leeds when there were fewer cinemas to go to as well, and it kind of worked out nicely. So my wife and I, last year, we celebrated our 31st wedding anniversary. And we had met in Manchester at sixth form college. Okay. And we just started going out before the end of sixth form. And so she was going to teacher training college in Ormskirk, which in Lancashire, just north of Liverpool. Okay. And I was signed up to go to Leeds University. And thank goodness for National Express, the coach route. I expect it still runs, but it was the coach route was Liverpool to Hull, right. And it would go Liverpool, Manchester, Bradford, Leeds, and then kind of onwards to Hull. And so it was perfect for seeing each other. We managed to see each other every single week that I was at Leeds. One week I'd go to Liverpool and then to Ormskirk. One week she would come to Leeds, and then the third week we'd meet back in our hometown of Manchester. So absolutely great course at Leeds University. Made lots of friends. Lived in a university self-catering flat in the first year. Moved out to renting a house in Headingley with some of my flatmates from the first year in the second year, which turned out to be the coldest winter for 25 years back at the time. So not a good year to live in student housing without any heating.
I could imagine. I went to the University of Hull, but there was a really small campus in Scarborough. And during the winter time over in Scarborough, it is amazingly cold. Walking down that hill from Valley Road into the town center was crazy. My hands would get blue. And I'm from the Caribbean, right. I say Lucia. So when I went over, it was just what did I do here? What choice did I make? So I understand what you mean about that cold. Probably wasn't as cold as what you experienced, but that's interesting. Mm-hmm.
No, yeah. So just a fabulous 3 years, and as I say, it's really a delight to go back and talk to current students, be they computer science students, or be they in any of the film and media program that's at the university. So complete delight. I had a great experience a few years ago. It was, let me see, I can work out what the date was. It must have been 2017. Yes, 2017, and I was back at Leeds, and I was talking to I was doing a kind of history of IMDb to the computer science students, and I get partway through the conversation, and I say, so on the 24th of April, 1998. IMDb was acquired by Amazon, and I could see, like, on one of the lecture theatre rows, that there was somebody like burst out laughing, and then like their friend is kind of like elbowing them at the side, and I'm kind of like, oh, I wonder what's going on. What's going on there. And so the lecture finishes, and the young lady, the student, came down and she said, I'm so sorry for laughing when you said that. It's my 19th birthday today.
Okay.
and the day I was giving the talk was the 24th. Sorry, I should have said that up front. I was giving the talk on the 24th of April, 2017. Okay. So it was a night. We actually sold to Amazon the day she was born. And there she was in this lecture.
Wow, that's something else.
Kind of like hearing about how a computer science student from Leeds University, which she also was,
yes.
sold their company to Amazon.com on the day she was born.
Crazy.
It did make me feel old, by the way.
Never mind that. They all envy you. That's the whole point. So that's an amazing story. And well, I think what your staff would have mentioned, I am a member of the staff at the University of Leeds. I work for their business change team. So I'm not really student interfacing. We kind of deal with process analysis and looking at, how we could try to make certain processes better per se. But most people who know me, I do my acting on the side. I do some presenting and everything. And this is my passion, content creation and talking to people.
Great.
So University of Leeds, awesome place to work. I really love it. Anyone who's really interested in science, because it's a really science-based university, it's an awesome place to work. Where my passions are concerned, I have totally different aspirations. But no, it was really interesting because when I did some research on you, I was just literally looking through the database because my agent was trying to update something on my profile, and I was checking it back. And I was like, I wonder who started the database? Who created this? Where did this come from? And I did the research and I came across your name, and then I realized, you studied at the University of Leeds. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And I had just started the Actors Post, this website which I'm running this interview for. And I was like, that seems like a really interesting connection. Possibly, have a conversation with you about it. What was your time like in Leeds? And just kind of find out a little more about how the database kind of came about. So it's an awesome connection, I suppose, coming full circle in this way to be able to talk to you.
Thank you. You should try and get Chris Pine. Do you know Chris Pine, the actor? He did a year. He did a year exchange.
Yes. Well,
I met him once, and we had a good conversation about kind of like our time in Leeds.
You're a movie guru, so if you could make that connection for me, I'll be very grateful.
Sadly, we didn't exchange email addresses. We just exchanged funny stories about living in Leeds. But he too is equally kind of like, oh man, I love my time in Leeds.
I didn't know that there was one lecture series that happened. So my literature lecturer at Sixth Form College in St. Lucia, who's published loads of different books, his name is Mr. Kendall Hippolyte. I'll give him a shout out here. Awesome poet and writer. He did a lecture series because I think some of the literature students are studying his text. And I walked into the lecture theater and I saw the picture of Chris Pine. I was like, "You joking? This guy went to school here, went to university here." And I was like, "Oh!" And I read there was a little text under there which says that he graduated.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, that's really impressive." So, so yeah, it's really good to see and make those connections in the acting world, sort of thing.
Yes.
Excellent.